Hello, ski racing fans, and welcome to the American Downhillers Podcast, Season 2, Episode 8. I'm two-time Olympian Doug Lewis, and with me is World Championship medalist AJ Kitt and Chamonix champion winner Marco Sullivan. World champion Darren Rawls is out skiing fast and coaching some speed skiers as we record this. As the World Cup takes a break from ski racing, everyone's attention turns to the World Championships being held in Courchevel, France, where it's all about the top three. Gold, silver, and bronze medals are on the line. And our guest today stood on the podium at the World Championships back in 2003. She is a two-time Olympian, raced 130 World Cups over her career, a four-time national champion, and as I said, shocked the world in 2003 with a wild run that won her the bronze medal at the World Championships in St. Moritz, Switzerland. Please welcome Jonna Mendez.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here and chat with you all.
All right, Jonna, thanks for joining us. Where are you, and have you been getting out to ski lately?
I'm in Sun Valley, Idaho. I grew up in Lake Tahoe, skiing at Heavenly, but I've been in Sun Valley, Idaho for the past almost 12 years. I run the Sun Valley Ski Academy program here, and I have been getting out to ski. This will shock some people. I've taken to Nordic skiing, so I skate ski nearly as much as I alpine ski now.
All right, keeps you in shape. Well, we're going to talk about your role at Sun Valley, but first we have to talk about the World Championship medal. Please talk about that day, that run. Did you have any clue that you'd be standing on the podium by the end of the day?
I mean, any championship that you're at as a U.S. ski team athlete, when you've qualified for, you've had the results to get you on the team. I knew I could do it. I had a really great season up to that point. I had a fifth in Cortina the week prior. So everything was kind of, leading me to feel like I was prepped and ready to go. Like, with that being said, though, I mean, we all know here, like the World Championships and Olympics, like anything can happen and does happen. And I was just hoping that worked out in my favor. And it thankfully did.
Did you have an idea during that run that it was going to be on good enough for a podium?
The run felt great. I was really fired up to race, extremely excited. And, what was interesting is that the morning did not go very well. And so, that's something I think about a lot as I reflect back on that day, is that I didn't sleep the night before. I had a horrible sleep. I crashed during warm up. There was just so much about it that was not feeling quite right. But I still knew that I could overcome all that and that it could be a really great day. And so, yeah, gearing up in the start house and, spending those 10 minutes that led me to my run, I was feeling really charged up and I had a great plan, and I pulled it off and had, one of the better runs of my life.
I remember being in the audience at the awards ceremony, and everyone was so psyched with you being on the podium and Kirsten Clark on the podium, and two ladies who just everyone was always pulling for you and wanting you to do well. And that day was super special. And like you said, it was almost 20 years ago to the day, right?
Yep.
Which is crazy. So. That much time has passed, but it was always so cool to see you do well, and on that stage was incredible.
It was a great day to ski fast. That's for sure. And sharing it with Clarky meant a ton. Being up there with my teammate, I think that hadn't happened for a couple decades. During that champs also is when Schlope had a podium, Eric Schlope and Bodie. And so the four of us had all medaled. And that made it really special too. But I mean, we had a great crew there. St. Moritz, for those of you who have been there, is just a really epic, beautiful ski area that people love to be at. So, I mean, it was a fun venue to have a, record-breaking result for me.
What do you feel like is the difference between, you made the comment as an American when you qualify for the Worlds or the Olympics that, you've earned it, you're ready to go. And I agree. And I think that results reflect that, Americans rise to the occasion at big events like that. And so what is it, do you think, is the difference between, you know, when it's a World Cup race versus when you're out there just racing for medals?
Yeah, I mean, I've thought about that a lot. I mean, Americans are kind of known to be racehorses, and I definitely was. I loved big events. They get me super fired up. You know, some of my better results are at bigger events, Junior Worlds and, you know, Olympics were here and there. But, you know, I think having raced in Salt Lake City in 2002, as amazing as those games were, there was a lot of pressure being on home turf. And so in Europe, like, we're never on home turf. Like, we never, you know, there's never that pressure. And I think maybe the Europeans feel it a little bit more and get a little, it gets in their head a little bit. And where Americans, like, just kind of continuously, like, lay it over and get on the podium at champs and, you know, in Olympics.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, when I raced, for sure, the Americans were an underdog. And so we have nothing to lose, everything to gain, put it on the line. And the Americans now, with the success over the last 20 and 30 years, you think we wouldn't be underdogs, but it's still that feeling, the Americans against the world. And I think that does fire everyone up on these big races.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you're right. We should be the underdogs. Like, look at our last, like, several decades. I mean, we have some of the best skiers in the world at any given time. But yeah, a lot of the time we are considered that way. And I think it's such a motivator. Like, it feels great to be in that position. And I actually really always love to be in that position, like, kind of behind the leader with, you know, the ability to surprise people. And I skied with some of the best American skiers of all time. I started my career under Peekaboo. Hillary Lind was unfortunately she'd retired right when I was coming on onto the team. And I've heard such great things about her, but I was with Peekaboo, and then, you know, Julia and Lindsay. I mean, some of the most incredible skiers in the world. And so I never minded, like, that they were in the spotlight and I was kind of under the radar. It worked in my favor for sure.
Jonna, I remember you were not under the radar when you were a young racer in Tahoe. Jonna and I are almost the same age, and I grew up on the other side of the lake, and Jonna would beat everyone in Tahoe, including all the boys, until we were like 15 or 16. And then it was always Jonna and Caroline Lalive were like battling for the top spot in the races, and the boys were like, you know, taking second fiddle. So Jonna was always very fast growing up and took it to the World Cup, obviously.
I have really good memories of being a teenager with Caroline, and we had so much fun with it. And I mean, we were growing up in Tahoe, like, we loved to ski. We weren't at the same ski area. She moved kind of quite a bit as a junior, but yeah, I think that's what helped me too as I got older and more professional, and my career continued, is like that love of skiing and just having those teenage years where we spent so much time, like, in the trees, jumping, just having fun with the sport. I think we're missing a little bit of that these days with junior racers.
I think it's interesting that you did not have a great warm up and were not feeling maybe as confident on your day that you won the medal. I remember the day I woke up in Bormio when I won my medal. It had been raining and it was cold, warm the day before, and I was all bummed out because I'm an Eastern racer. I like the ice, but it froze overnight, and I didn't know that. And I went out for my little morning jog in the morning, and what had been puddles the night before were all sheets of ice. And I walked down the stairs and I slipped and I fell on my butt super hard, like jolting my whole body. But I just smiled because, oh my God, it's glare ice. This is my day. Like, that was like an omen that I think about. AJ, on your world championship medal day, what was that day about? Did you have any omens that you might think back on?
Gosh, I don't really know. And you know, you guys, Jonna, yours was 20 years ago. Mine was 30 years ago. This is what the gray is all about. 1993. But Man, I don't know if it was too long ago to remember, or if it was just one of those days where I just was sort of so not in my head that I don't really recall all that much about the day other than the race run. I remember like, I don't know, I remember a couple of things about the race run, but not a lot. And I made one big mistake. I mean, it was a really flat course and it was a glider's course. And I had won the last training run and I might have been like second or third in the other training run. And so I was expecting to win. And I was like, if you don't win, it's a failure because it's a glider's course. You're a glider. You know, this was set up for you. And I ended up third. I made a big mistake before the flats and ended up third. And I was really disappointed with my race because I felt like I could have skied a lot better. But, you know, by the end of the day, I was like, okay, podium's amazing, you know, and getting a bronze. But I really don't have a lot of recollections about that day. I mean, we were in Japan. It rained a lot. It snowed a lot. And I just remember sort of more about the whole week than I do about the day itself. So, but it's all, you know, it's all great memories.
I was just going to say, all of you guys have your world champs medals. I never even came close to a world champs medal. And I think I had, for some reason, I always felt like world champs were kind of an interruption in the season. Like I really liked having the World Cup tour, you know, going from stop to stop, and then you throw in this big event that was, you got a new uniform and the big wigs would show up. But I kind of felt like it was sometimes another race. And I guess for whatever reason, I never took it that seriously, and it definitely showed in my results. Like I never did well. I think I raced maybe 5 of them and never was even top 10. I don't think. It was like terrible. So I guess it can go both ways with, you know, if you don't, the big events, if you really consider yourself a dark horse and you like go for that podium, go for broke, it can be great. And if you don't take it as seriously, it can just be lackluster. And that was kind of, unfortunately, my experience. But I'm glad you guys are all here to talk about the good side of it.
I mean, honestly, Marco, I feel a little the same way. And it was more with the Olympics. You know, it was such a, you said it felt like a disruption in the season. And that's exactly how I felt. You know, I really liked the rhythm of, you know, the weekly downhills, the weekly races. And in January, it gets very rhythmical like that. I mean, right now we're in this period of, or I guess they just finished this period of incredible concentration of races on the World Cup circuit. And now they've taken the break to go to World Championships. And anybody that was in any kind of a good rhythm on the World Cup, by the time they get back to the next World Cup race, it's a month. I mean, who knows if they're still going to have that rhythm. The best thing they can hope for is to take that rhythm into the World Championships and get a good result there. But, you know, and I think that maybe that's part of why Americans do so well, is because maybe we liked the break. Maybe we liked the break from the monotony and the repetition of the World Cup, and you go to this new event where you get, you know, renewed energy, you get fired up, you get that new uniform, and you know, you feel like, hey, the playing field's level. I think on the World Cup, a lot of times the playing field doesn't feel level for us, but at the World Championships, I think maybe it does feel more level, and so we go there with a renewed sense of competitiveness and some fire to go and make some noise.
Hey, Doug Lewis here, and I want to talk about the American Downhiller Speed Camp. American Downhiller is the leader in teaching young ski racers how to go fast and have fun. 2023 will mark the 6th annual American Downhiller Speed Skills Camp in Mammoth Mountain. Our speed camp is coached exclusively by current and former World Cup racers and coaches who are passionate about helping the next generation of athletes achieve their dreams. We specifically focus on aerodynamics, jumping technique, speed tactics, and the mental training required to safely navigate Super G and downhill race courses. If you are a ski racer who wants to go fast, check out our website, AmericanDownhiller.com, for all specific camp dates. Doug, I want to dig deep into Jonna. Talk about what Peekaboo did for you and what you tried to do for them, for Mancuso and Vaughn and those following you.
Yeah, well, Peek was, I mean, everyone knows she's like just a fascinating human. And I feel like I was able to really work together with her and like study her and see what worked for her. And again, like I was fine to be kind of in her shadow, and she and I got along really well. I think at first, probably because I was not a threat. And I was coming on board at like 16 and 17. And I think as different as Peekaboo and I are, we are so different. There's some parts of ski racing like that we were really connected with. And, one of those things is like, we really analyzed courses. I was one of those athletes that, when you have an hour and a half to inspect, I was on the hill until the last minute for the first day of, inspection. And she was too. And we would look at the courses together. We'd talk about it together. We'd watch the other girls together, and we really shared info that way. And so that was really fun to me because I was into it. Like I was really into like analyzing the turns and the different directions you could go and what the other women were doing and what was working for them. And she was too. And then she would just get so fired up to race. And I always connected with that. She was like just such a racehorse. And, Goja is similar, like watching her, like Peak would just hammer, like no matter what. And really like paid the price and, crashed several times because of that. But I think she'd probably tell you it was worth it because she came out on top so often. And so I really appreciated having Peak as a mentor and a guide. And then as she was shifting out, Lindsay and Julia were really like coming on board. And I mean, they rose so fast that, there wasn't that much time that they were kind of underneath me. I mean, they like bypassed me pretty quickly. And they too are like so different in their approach and the way they look at skiing and the way they treat every day. But I really appreciated what both of them brought to the table. And Lindsay was more analytical like me, and Julia was such a free spirit, like just did her own thing, was really comfortable going against the norm, kind of telling people that their program wasn't her program. And I appreciated that too.
That's super interesting. I just wanted to share, me and Bill Johnson were total opposites, yet we were on the team. We fed off each other in some ways, but we didn't hang out. He was break all the rules. I was like, follow the rules, Dougie. And it was just really different, but we worked together in some ways. Marco and AJ, talk about your teammates and how they can be so different, but be on the same team.
Well, I think, if you ask any of my old teammates, I was definitely that own program guy. And it wasn't so much that I was rebelling against the team. I just knew what I needed to make my environment the best it could be to be successful. I knew what I needed, as far as support, as far as whatever. And so I made sure that happened for me. It was maybe a bit of a selfish way, but I couldn't really make it work any other way. And, I think, in the back of my mind, I always hope that me requiring modification to the team approach that make it work for me would also make it work well for everybody else. But I was more of that individual athlete amongst the team sport where, there's the other side of that coin is it's a team sport and you compete like an individual. So, I think both approaches work. You just have to make it work for you the best you can.
And I think through all of our generations, we saw that individual, or we really saw that growing as the more like superstar racers came. I was similar to Jonna, where I kind of spanned. I came in when I was first on the team. It was like Darren was our kind of star on the downhill team, and Bodie, of course, was moving in there. And then as I continued, it was just moving on to another generation. And I tried to like pass on what I had learned and whatnot. But there was a lot of individualization at that time with, some guys having just fully their own, it was actually like buses, like tour buses with Bodie and Darren, and they were still part of the team, still with us on the hill every day, but it was very separated off the hill. So we kind of, it was a juggling act of balancing the guys who were within the hotel as a team, and then kind of having these outliers who we all definitely respected and felt they were our teammates, but we definitely felt like we were chasing them and a little separated. So it was trying to balance all that stuff, and it, I think it worked out some of the time. Some of the time it was worked out better for others than than us.
Wend produces a sophisticated line of ski and snowboard waxes for use by skiers, riders, racers, and shops. The current Wend snow wax formulations have come from over 50 years of progressive blend reformulation and on-slope and in-lab testing. This has been in conjunction with the feedback of some of the world's top ski and snowboard athletes. Athletes who know real speed, like Kitzbühel champ Darren Rolfs and 2019 Birds of Prey GS champion Tommy Ford. Wend no longer sells any products containing fluorocarbon compounds and instead utilizes natural, plant-derived and/or biodegradable additives that substantially increase the overall eco-friendliness of the Wend Snow Wax product line. Give Wend a follow on Instagram at Wend Waxworks and purchase your Wend products at wendperformance.com. And don't forget to use the code ADH20 for 20% off your purchase.
Hey, Jonna, your results on World Cup make you a speed skier, but were you always a speed skier? And how did you land going fast on the speed team?
I was not always a speed skier. I was a really strong slalom skier and GS skier. And GS kind of I stuck with through my whole career, but slalom I raced like into my early 20s. But my body type, and I think just my upbringing and the kids I grew up with and the coaching that I had definitely led me to be like really comfortable with speed. And I mean, I started racing downhill when I was 15. I mean, in the Western region, we had just a couple of venues that had speed events, and my coaches talked about, heading to Jackson Hole. They had a great kind of entry-level downhill track, and they sent me with a pair of downhills that were just men's long GS skis. And my coach, Doug Karwoski, told me, like, you're wearing all of your clothes, like everything, because you're going to go too hard. Like, I don't want you crashing. You need to feel this out. But next year, you're going to come back and win this. And sure enough, like, I ran in clothes, but I could not stay like in all my gear. Like, I had so much fun right off the bat, and I loved it. And I mean, something that always worked in my favor. And, you see a lot. And I mean, I know you all understand this really well. Like, some people know how to keep their speed. Like, they keep their momentum. They have a nice touch on the snow and can just let their skis go. And it became clear really quickly that I could do that. And so I was missing a lot of the fundamentals, but I was comfortable with speed and liked it. And so we had to kind of build up my toolkit as I got older. And I really didn't have so many of the skills that you need to be a really good skier, downhill skier, until, I was in my late teens or early 20s. I mean, I was just scrappy and going for it. And I mean, I raced World Cups, I raced Junior Worlds, just kind of going for it and figuring it out as I went.
So in the position that you're at with Sun Valley right now, I mean, how do you translate that experience into the athletes that you work with in Sun Valley at age? You said you started downhill at 15, but I mean, to develop the skills, maybe you start a little bit earlier. So how do you approach that now?
Yeah, I think, we're part of the Intermountain division, and I've been really impressed with how they handle speed and entering athletes into speed and helping make them comfortable. My son, I have a boy, Declan, who's rising through the ranks. He's a first year U14. And so, I mean, being a parent in the sport has been like fascinating and way more stressful than me ever competing. But we have a little ski area called Soldier Mountain, and it's south of Sun Valley. It's about an hour away. And it's just a privately run, tiny little ski hill with 2 lifts. And they let us take it over for several weeks in the wintertime. And the Intermountain comes in. They just had a first year U14 speed camp there. And they very thoughtfully brought in, I think it was 70 athletes from the Intermountain. And they practiced rollers, they practiced jumping, they like leaned in and were able to like really carefully and safely get on their speed skis and test it out. And I know my son came back like really fired up to continue. And, you know, we never had that. Like I didn't have that growing up. It was like I was tossed into it and happened to be like really good at it. And now it's a more thoughtful approach. And, you know, I'm sure most of the other divisions and regions do something similar, but, you know, we're hoping to really build and grow on that. And I think, you know, my slalom and GS training helped my speed so much. And I think speed does the same for a slalom and GS skier. So I hope the trend continues, at least within Intermountain.
Well, I know, you know, listening to you today and knowing Marco and Darren and Travis and, you know, all the people from, especially from Tahoe, but the West in particular, at the ages that, when where things were at when we grew up, and I'm older than you guys, but I think it was very similar. You guys did a lot of free skiing, you're right? You challenged the mountain in different ways other than traditional, you know, GS and gate rhythmical turns, right? It was free skiing, it was powder skiing, it was, you know, maybe some backcountry. You know, I grew up on a 600-foot hill in Western New York, but I mean, me and my buddies, we would bomb the mountain. We'd be like, okay, let's see who gets to the bottom first without turning. And so that was our version of like challenging the mountain in different ways. And that I think is what helped me develop that comfort level. When I first experienced speed like you did, I got to the bottom and I was exhilarated. I was thrilled by the fact that I could just let them run on this closed track with gates, and I knew where I could go, and I could go over blind jumps and trust that there wasn't some, you know, public skier laying at the bottom, you know, like I could at night when I was bombing with my friends. So, you know, but I think as, you know, as mentors in the sport now, like you are and Marco is, and I work in coaching a lot as well. And Lou, you do too. You know, we have to hand this knowledge off to this next generation, and in a way that like they do at Soldier with it, that's methodical and thoughtful and safe to develop these skills for these kids younger, so that when they do get into those first, you know, downhills, as truthfully as like in the FIS age, when we're getting onto true downhill tracks, that they're, you know what they're doing. They've got the capability to go out there and race it rather than go and get their first experiences as downhillers. You know, obviously the camps that Marco does are amazing, you know, skill builders. But I'm glad to hear that at the club level, what you guys are doing is also developing those skills, because we've got to, you know, we can do it with GS skis on, we can do it with slalom skis on, teaching kids how to go over terrain, you know, how to absorb, how to stay forward over terrain, how to glide, how to let the skis run, how to let the skis do the work, build momentum, all those things that are really essential for downhillers.
Yeah, you bet. And, you know, we have a Western region camp, so it's extended. You know, we started in divisionally for U14s, and then next week we have a big U16 crew from the Western region. So, you know, hopefully we'll continue doing this. And I just think it adds so much to a tech skier. Like, I think it only adds to, you know, what a slalom and GS skier brings to the table. And, you know, I remember Sarah Schlepper a lot, like being frightened of the speeds in GS. And I was like, Schlepp, get on your Super G boards. Like anytime you get in a GS start after you've run speed, and it just feels slow and makes you want to go faster. And it was the same, you know, with Super G. When you've been running downhill and then get in a Super G, it felt slow. And so then you like wanted to be faster. And yeah, it is super fun to work with junior athletes. And it's, I mean, you know, like there's something about like being in the start of a speed course and knowing like that whole area, like for some of you, some of the World Cup downhill is like 2.5 miles. Like it's all yours. There is no one on it. You own it. It's safe as it could possibly be. And I mean, there's just, how often does anyone in the world get that experience? Like a whole run, a whole mountain to themselves to do what they can with it. Yeah,
absolutely.
I think there is a good effort through most of the regions now to get that exposure to speed. And we actually just had a project out in Okemo, Vermont. It's kind of a collaboration with American Downhiller and PARA, which was the Pennsylvania Alpine Racing Association. And we brought 80 kids from Pennsylvania, U16s and like first year FIS, and Okemo provided the space, and we brought in 6 Olympian coaches. We had Andrew Weibrecht out there, and Scotty Venus, and Chelsea Marshall, Keely Kelleher, myself, and Dane Spencer. And we just had a speed camp, and we didn't have like a ton of terrain. You know, there's a couple wave tracks and a jump, and a hill long enough to ski some Super G, and getting all these kids on their speed skis, some of them for the first time. It was just awesome. They're like so excited, and pick it up pretty quick. If you can provide that safe venue with some good direction, I feel like you don't need a ton, and get them up to speed, get them in the air a little bit, and get those fundamentals going. Like you're saying, Jonna, like that just carries through, and they're all of a sudden they're comfortable at speed, and that can take them forward in all events. And anyway, this project was pretty cool. So I think there is stuff across the country now going in that direction, and hopefully we see it pay off here in several years when all these kids are up in their fists racing times.
Yeah, the next set of American downhillers.
That's right.
I had a speed project, I mean, it was years ago, but in Michigan, like a tiny, tiny hill. And what I loved is like those kids love the sport. Like, and I don't know if Marco, you saw that too with this crew. It's like they're at these like really small mountains. And AJ, it sounds like kind of same, like you were at a small mountain, like, and they made the most of it and loved it so much. And I mean, they bring so much of that awesome attitude in ski racing. They were phenomenal.
I think it's so important to get these kids comfortable in speed, tucking like AJ. We had that growing up at the Middlebury Snow Bowl. I mean, it was probably a GS, but it was called the downhill for us, and we got to tuck a little. And I just got so comfortable at speed, even though I was focused on being the next Ingemar Stenmark GS skier. When I finally got invited to a downhill, I had the comfort, then I had the technical skills, and it just matched for me. So getting them comfortable at speed, so critical. I'm going to start with Jonna, and then I'll go to Marco. But how do you talk to parents that may be hesitant about speed? Or are you finding that the parents are like, I want my kid into speed as much as possible?
I find it's the kids that are more reluctant than parents. I mean, thankfully here, like we have such a great entry into speed. And so, we never push it with athletes or parents. Like if you're truly not comfortable with this, I mean, it's at any age actually, is like, if you're that frightened, you should not do it. We've all seen athletes who, it's just not in them. Like they don't like it, and that's okay. And with parents, it's, I always encourage parents to give it a try, like give their children the opportunity to try it, knowing that we're creating a really safe environment for them to do that. If it wasn't so safe and so thoughtful, I wouldn't say that, but it is. Like it's the right entry at the right age. And parents usually, they've invested so much of their, time and resources at this point that, they trust the system. And so we don't run into too many barriers in that way.
I would agree. Not too many barriers, and a lot of enthusiasm for speed, especially from the kids and the parents who are reluctant. I think having great coaches, I try to involve as many ex-athletes as possible who have been there and can teach the kids from their own experience, and the parents trust that their kids are being taught by professionals. And I think the argument of like giving them these fundamental skills in a very safe venue is only going to benefit, because I mean, they're going to go fast no matter what. Most of them, they're going to bomb straight down the mountain like little AJ, go on their 600-foot hill. But if you can give them a few real good fundamental skills that they can actually do that safely, that benefits everyone. So I think everyone wants to go fast. It's fun, so giving them the way to do it safely is the key.
Jonna, talk about your most favorite thing about your job right now, and maybe the most challenging part about your job.
Oh my gosh. I mean, my favorite part is working with kids. Like they're total goofballs, in the best way. I'm really lucky. the ski academy we have 6 different disciplines. And so I feel like my life has really been enriched by being able to work with athletes in disciplines that are, were more foreign to me. We have cross country and big mountain, snowboard, freestyle, free ski. And, they're all pushing the limits in their own sports. And so it's really fun to participate and be a part of their lives as they, love the sport and hopefully find their passion that will keep them part of it for the rest of their lives. Like, that's one of the things I love about this sport, is that you can do it forever. And I'm really, really grateful to be here, like that I'm able to stay active in the ski industry and have a role that has like pushed my boundaries. And then the worst part of the job,
Or most challenging. You don't have to say.
yeah. Most challenging.
Keep it diplomatic.
There's a lot that I want to do here. Like, this is a brand new, not brand new, we're in our 12th year, but there is a lot that I want to do, and a lot of programmatic adjustments like that we keep making to improve. And so it's just finding the time to be a mom and finding the time to work and be a wife and, manage all the pieces of my different roles can be really challenging. I want to be in like 6 places at once, and I can't do that. But I feel pretty lucky to be here. I really love what I do.
Doug Lewis here. If you are a U12, U14, or U16, Elite Team fitness camps are for you. This is not your average fitness camp, as we teach the vital skills of sports psychology and sports nutrition, along with tough, challenging workouts. You will leave camp with more power, strength, and agility, with a deeper understanding about nutrition, and with the mental skills of confidence, focus, and pushing limits, which will take you to the next level. Over our 30 years, we have coached Olympic champions, World Cup stars, NCAA champions, including U.S. ski teamers Michaela Schifrin, Lauren Masuga, Alice Merriweather, Jimmy Krupka, Grace Henderson, and Sammy Worthington. And finally, although we push our limits to the edge, we have a ton of fun. We are holding 2 week-long sessions this July at the Killington Mountain School. Find all the info at eliteteam.com. So we each have a chance to talk about something we've done in the past couple of weeks that's been amazing. AJ, you got to go first, because I was jealous of what you got to do.
Yeah, I just got back yesterday from a long trip in Europe. I was over there with our friends from the ADL Ski Club, Kyle Watson and his crew. This is my second trip with those guys. And we went to Kitzbühel for the races there. And we went to Schladming for the night race, which was the night slalom, but then they added the GS. So it was night GS as well. And then we went to Innsbruck and stayed there, and we went free skiing around Innsbruck a little bit. And I had a great time. Kyle always does such a great job with his trips. Met a bunch of new people, made some lifelong friendships, and had some incredible experiences. So I would say that I've been to Kitzbühel a bunch in the last 5 or 6 years. And it's so different now than it was when I raced. It was definitely always the biggest race on the calendar when I was racing, and it still is, but it's a different way. Like, it's supercharged now with, air show, flyovers, and they've got drone videos of, chasing the guys down the hill through through Lerkenschuss into the turns above Hausberg, and, just like the whole party atmosphere. And maybe it's Austria, but because Schladming was because it's a condensed arena, there's fewer people, but because it's condensed, it feels like it's maybe a little bit more of a wild party than Kitzbühel. But I remember feeling after we left Schladming, so I'd been kind of on this whirlwind for 6 or 7 days, and I was just a fan there. I wasn't working, I wasn't racing, and I wasn't doing anything very stressful. But I remember leaving going, man, I am glad to get out of here. It's been frenetic. It's been crazy. And it reminded me of exactly how I felt when I was racing, that going to Kitzbühel was a thrill. I looked forward to it. It was a great week of racing, but I was so glad that it was over. And I would get back to sort of the humdrum of the normal tour, not as many fans around, not as much fanfare around, not as much circus atmosphere. And I think that, for me, I felt like, okay, I can exhale. And I know that the guys and gals, the athletes, after a big week like that are exhaling, but now they're getting ready for world championships, getting ready for another week of craziness. But yeah, it was good to be back. It's always good to be back in that world, that culture. The Austrian ski racing culture is the best. It's great.
Hey, Doug Lewis here. If you've ever dreamed of traveling to Wengen or Kitzbühel to watch the classic World Cup downhills, then the ADL Ski Club is for you. Their small group trips are geared for passionate skiers and race fans. They take you to the heart of ski racing's biggest races at the Lauberhorn, Hahnenkamm, and Night Slalom in Schladming. This year, American downhiller AJ Kidd is leading the group to Kitzbühel, and they have a ton of special access to the races, parties, and athletes that make this World Cup unique among all professional sports. Even though this year's trips are both sold out, right now is the perfect time to get your name on the list for next year's trips. Visit adlskiclub.com. That's adlskiclub.com and reach out to them to secure your spot. Rumor has it that I might even be joining them for one of these trips soon.
For me, like I mentioned earlier last week, I was out in Okemo running that little speed camp, which was pretty rewarding to see all the kids going fast. And it actually snowed out there on our last day, so it did a little powder skiing, Vermont style. I think it was like 3 inches of snow. But then came home, and it's been snowing here a lot in Tahoe as well. So lots of powder skiing and just free skiing and having fun. And then I think going to another little speed series in Idaho next week with the FIS team from Palisades. So a lot of powder skiing intermixed with speed skiing.
I got to go back to Vermont. I grew up at the Middlebury College Snow Bowl, this tiny little area that's part of the college. And I go back every year just to ski with the club. And I am just so blown away, and I get transformed and transported back to when I was 12. I got to sit in front of the fire where I used to dry my boots and then melt my boots every year. I got to ski the cliff, which was like 30 feet high when I was 12, and now it's like 3 feet high. But I got to do all that stuff with a bunch of kids who are way into it. So I just love going back there and seeing that really with the kids and with these small clubs, nothing's changed. It's about the love of the sport and being part of a group and just crushing the mountain. So I had a great time, and I always enjoy going back.
All right. And then I'd say, as a mom, I am so delighted that my son loves to ski. And he was at Soldier last week, and I mean, he's the kind of kid that it's raining outside and he comes back and like, ski team was the best, and it's horrible conditions, and he comes back, ski team was the best. And I think this is the best sport in the world, and I don't care where he goes with it, but that he loves it, and then I know that it'll be part of his life too, is really special to me. On the work front, we had an athlete who qualified for the Junior World Championships in St. Anton as a U18, like very young to be named to the team. And he had a gold and a silver in the U18, for his age group in the downhill Super G. And I actually cried in my office. I was so proud and so excited for him. And he's a great kid who works really hard and puts the time and energy in, and was a real student of the sport. And so, work-wise, that was a huge, that was the best part of my last couple of weeks.
I got to give a shout out to Allison Mullen, who was, when we first did our first American Downhiller camp in 2017, Allison was a little U14 camper, was the first to breakfast every morning. I was like so fired up to be on the hill. And she actually just scored her first Europa Cup downhill point today or yesterday. So
yeah, girl.
That's seeing it evolve up into the next generation, and it's super cool.
Well, thanks for listening and watching to our American Downhiller podcast. Special thanks to Jonna Mendez for joining us, an American downhiller who is still giving back to the ski world as director of the Sun Valley Ski Academy. Please spread the word about our podcast. Share with your friends, coaches, teammates, and club. You'll find us either on Spotify or Apple. And thanks to our American Downhiller sponsors, ADL Ski Club, Wendwax, Elite Team Fitness Programs, and American Downhiller Camps. Coming up will be shows on the World Championship speed races, and then on to Palisades, Tahoe, Aspen, and the World Cup finals. For AJ, Darren, And Marco, thanks for listening.
The ADL Ski Club is proud to be the exclusive U.S. promoter for the Franz Klammer movie, Chasing the Line. The movie takes you back to 1976 and focuses on the few fateful days that culminated in Klammer's wild and crazy run that secured his victory at the 1976 Olympics and his place in history as the Kaiser of downhill. The film tour kicks off in Seattle on February 15th, 9 days and 47 years after his famous victory. You can find all the tour dates, tickets, and movie swag at chasingtheline.com. And if you don't see a show in your hometown, contact them. They're actively looking for local independent promoters to host shows across the country.